The Valorian freighter grew smaller and smaller until it became just another dot among the stars. Kiravel watched it disappear from the dirty window of Outpost Theta 9. Her people had left her behind. They had thrown her away like broken equipment that nobody wanted anymore. She was only 16 cycles old. Among her species, she was still considered a child. But that did not matter to the Valorian High Council. They had looked at her with cold eyes and declared her genetically deficient. They had stripped away her citizenship papers. They had put her on a transport ship and dumped her on this dying space station at the edge of nowhere. Her crime was something she could not control. She had been born with a condition that made her bioluminescent markings work poorly. All Valorians had these markings on their skin. The markings glowed with beautiful light and showed that a person carried pure genetics. But Kiravel's markings were dim and flickered weakly. Among her people, those without the proper glow were considered cursed. They were seen as mistakes that should not exist. So they had abandoned her. The space station groaned and shuddered around her. Its power systems were failing. The lights flickered on and off every few minutes. The air tasted stale and thin. Kiravel knew she had maybe 3 days before the oxygen ran out completely. She had no food. She had no water. She had no way to call for help. She found a corner in the empty cargo bay and curled into a ball. Her silver skin felt cold against the metal floor. Tears fell from her large eyes and floated in the low gravity before drifting away. She had never felt so alone in her entire life. The only ships that traveled through this part of space belonged to a species that her people feared above all others: humans, the Deathworlders. The monsters from a planet so dangerous that it created predators unlike anything else in the galaxy. Kiravel had learned about them in school. Her teachers had shown pictures of their strange fleshy faces and their small eyes and their bizarre fur-covered heads. They had told her that humans ate the flesh of other creatures. They had told her that humans waged constant wars against each other for no reason. They had told her that humans felt no empathy for other life forms. If you ever see a human, her teacher had said, you must run. You must hide. You must pray that it does not notice you. But Kiravel had nowhere to run. She had nowhere to hide. All she could do was wait for death to take her. The first day passed slowly. Her throat became dry and her stomach ached with hunger. She tried to sleep, but the fear kept waking her up. The station made terrible sounds as its systems continued to fail. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps in the empty hallways, but it was only her imagination playing tricks on her. The second day was worse. Her vision started to blur. Her 4 hearts beat weakly in her chest. She could barely lift her head anymore. The air was getting harder to breathe. She wondered if this was what dying felt like. She wondered if anyone in the universe would even notice when she was gone. Then she heard a sound that made her blood turn to ice. It was the loud metallic clang of a docking clamp grabbing onto the station. Something had arrived. Something had found her. Kiravel dragged herself to the cargo bay window and looked outside. A ship had connected to the station. It was not a Valorian vessel. The hull was covered in scars and burns from many battles. Strange symbols were painted on its side in colors she did not recognize. The name on the ship read Wandering Star. It was a human ship. Kiravel's weak legs carried her back to her hiding spot. She pressed herself into the darkest corner she could find and tried to make herself as small as possible. Her hearts pounded so hard she thought they might burst. She heard the airlock open somewhere in the station. She heard heavy footsteps coming closer. 3 figures appeared in the cargo bay doorway. They wore protective suits and carried equipment she had never seen before. One by one, they removed their helmets. The first was a tall male with dark brown skin and broad shoulders. He had kind eyes that looked around the room with curiosity. The second was a female with bright red hair tied back behind her head. She moved with confidence and authority. The third was a younger male with pale skin and nervous movements. He carried a scanning device that beeped and hummed as he waved it. Around the young one pointed his scanner directly at Kiravel's hiding spot. He said something in the rough human language. The others turned to look. Kiravel tried to run, but her body refused to obey. Her legs gave out beneath her, and she collapsed onto the cold floor. She closed her eyes and waited for the claws and the teeth. She waited for the pain. She waited for the monsters to do whatever monsters did to helpless prey. Something soft landed on her shaking body. She opened her eyes in confusion. The red-haired female was kneeling beside her. The human had removed her own jacket and draped it over Kiravel like a blanket. The female's face showed no hunger. It showed no anger. It showed something Kiravel did not understand at all. The human spoke, and her translator, Implant, struggled for a moment before finding the right words. "Hey, it is okay. You are safe now. We have got you." Kiravel tried to respond, but only a weak sound came from her throat. The tall male was already pulling something from his pack. He poured water from a container into a small cup and brought it to her cracked lips. "Small sips," he said gently. "Take it slow." The water tasted better than anything Kiravel had ever experienced. She drank greedily until the male pulled the cup away. The young one was scanning her body with his device. His face showed worry. "Captain," he said to the red-haired female. "She is very dehydrated and has not eaten in days. Valorian species. Still young. No injuries that I can see, but she needs medical help right away." The female called Captain nodded with a serious expression. "Let us get her to the medical bay. Daniel, can you carry her?" "Of course," the tall male replied. Before Kiravel could understand what was happening, the large human had lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing at all. His grip was strong but careful. She could feel heat coming from his body. Humans were warm-blooded creatures. Their internal temperature was much higher than most species. It felt like being held by a living furnace. They carried her toward their ship. Kiravel's confused mind tried to make sense of everything. These were supposed to be monsters. These were supposed to be savage predators. Why were they giving her water? Why were they treating her injuries? Why did they look at her with worry instead of hunger? She wanted to ask these questions, but she was too weak. The exhaustion finally won the battle. Her eyes closed and darkness took her. The last thing she felt was the warmth of human arms holding her safely as they carried her, away from the place where she had been left to die. Kiravel woke up in a bed softer than anything she had ever touched before. The mattress was thick and comfortable. A warm blanket covered her body from neck to feet. The room around her was small, but very clean. Strange human machines hummed and beeped with sounds she did not recognize. A thin tube was connected to her arm, feeding liquid into her body. She was alive. She had not expected to be alive. A human female sat in a chair next to the bed. She was older than the red-haired captain. Gray streaks ran through her brown hair, and small lines marked the skin around her eyes. She was reading something on a glowing tablet. When she noticed Kiravel moving, her face changed into a warm smile. "Good morning, little one," the woman said in a gentle voice. "I am Dr. Linda Morris. You have been sleeping for almost 2 days. How do you feel?" Kiravel's translator worked quickly to convert the human words. She tried to speak and was surprised when her voice actually worked. "Why?" she whispered. Linda tilted her head with a confused expression. "Why what, dear? Why did you save me?" The question seemed to puzzle the human doctor. She looked at Kiravel as if she had asked something very strange. "Because you needed help?" Linda replied simply. "Why would we not help you?" Kiravel stared at her and searched for lies in her face. She looked for hidden intentions or secret plans. "My people told me that humans are monsters, she said quietly. They told me you eat other species. They told me you have no empathy for anyone. Linda's expression changed several times. First, she looked surprised. Then she looked sad. Then she looked tired in a deep way that went beyond simple exhaustion. I see, she said softly. Well, I can promise you that we do not eat intelligent beings. And as for empathy, she reached out and gently took Kiravel's hand in her own. We have more of it than we sometimes know what to do with. The door slid open and the red-haired captain walked in. She carried a tray with a bowl on it. Her face brightened when she saw that Kiravel was awake. Hey, their survivor. Think you can eat something? Our cook Nathan made you some vegetable soup. We were not sure what Valorians can safely eat, so we kept it simple. Kiravel accepted the bowl with shaking hands. The soup was warm and had a rich savory taste that was completely different from the bland, nutrient paste she had grown up eating. She brought the bowl to her lips and drank hungrily. She was too starving to care about manners. The captain sat down in a chair across from her. What is your name? She asked. Kira-Vel. That is a pretty name. I am Emma. You already met Daniel and Kevin on the station. There are 6 other people in our crew. You will meet them when you feel better. She paused, and her face became more serious. Kiravel, can you tell us what happened? Why were you alone on that station? The memories came rushing back like a flood. Fresh tears spilled from Kiravel's large silver eyes. She told them everything. She told them about her defective markings that barely glowed. She told them about the laws of her people. She told them how the High Council had declared her worthless and thrown her away, like garbage. When she finished speaking, the room was very quiet. Linda had turned her face away, and her shoulders were shaking slightly. Emma's jaw was tight, and her hands were squeezed into fists at her sides. They abandoned you, Emma said slowly. Her voice was carefully controlled. Because you do not glow? Among my people, the glow is everything, Kiravel explained. It shows genetic purity. Without it, I am nothing. I am less than nothing. Emma stood up suddenly and walked to the window. She stared out at the stars for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was fierce with barely contained anger. That is the most monstrous thing I have ever heard. Kiravel flinched in fear. Had she said something wrong? Had she made the human captain angry at her? But Emma turned back around, and Kiravel saw that the anger was not directed at her. The captain's eyes burned with fury on her behalf. It was an emotion Kiravel had never seen before. Nobody had ever been angry for her. Nobody had ever cared enough. Listen to me, Emma said firmly. She moved to the bedside and knelt down so their eyes were at the same level. You are not nothing. You are not worthless. And you are not alone anymore. Kiravel's translator must have made an error. Surely she had misunderstood the words. I do not understand, she said. You are part of my crew now. If you want to be. Emma's voice was steady and certain. We will take you anywhere you want to go. We will help you start a new life somewhere safe. Or you can stay with us. The choice is yours. But either way, nobody is ever abandoning you again. Not while I am around. Kiravel felt something strange happening inside her chest. It was an unfamiliar sensation. It took her a moment to recognize it because she had never experienced it before. Hope. For the first time. Since her people had cast her out, she felt hope. But why? She asked again. She still could not understand. I am a stranger. I am not even the same species as you. Why would you care what happens to me? Emma smiled softly. Because you are a person. Because you needed help. Because that is what we do. Linda came to stand beside the captain. There is something you should understand about humans, she said gently. We form attachments very easily. We cannot help it. We see someone suffering and we want to fix it. We see someone alone, and we want to give them a family. It is just how we are built. Kiravel looked between the two human females. Their faces held no deception. Their eyes showed only kindness and concern. Everything she had learned about this species was proving to be wrong. The door opened again, and the tall male named Daniel entered. He was followed by the young nervous one named Kevin. They both smiled when they saw her awake. Hey there, little one, Daniel said warmly. Good to see you up. You had us worried for a while. Kevin stepped forward with excitement in his eyes. I have been researching your species. I hope that is okay. I study alien languages and cultures. Your people have such a fascinating history. Would you maybe be willing to tell me more sometime? Only if you want to, of course. No pressure. His awkward enthusiasm made Kiravel feel something she had not felt in a long time. She felt wanted. She felt interesting. She felt like someone worth talking to. She looked at the four humans standing around her bed. The kind doctor with her gentle hands. The fierce captain with her protective anger. The warm engineer with his friendly smile. The curious linguist with his eager questions. These were the monsters she had been taught to fear. These were the savage predators with no empathy. But all she saw were people who had risked their own safety to save a dying alien girl they had never met before. I would like that, she said quietly to Kevin. I would like that very much. The young human's face lit up with joy. And in that moment, Kiravel began to understand that everything she thought she knew about the universe was about to change. Weeks passed aboard the wandering star, and Kiravel slowly began to heal. Her body grew stronger as Dr. Linda fed her nutrients and medicine. But something else was healing too. Something deeper inside her that had been broken for a very long time. The crew of the human ship was unlike anything she had ever experienced. They were loud and messy and constantly argued about small, unimportant things. They laughed at jokes she did not understand. They played music that sounded strange to her ears. They ate meals together around a cramped table and talked over each other in excited voices. At first, Kiravel did not know how to act around them. Valorian society was cold and formal. People kept their distance from each other. Emotions were considered private matters that should never be displayed. But these humans wore their feelings openly like clothes for everyone to see. Daniel Hayes was the ship's engineer. He spent most of his days in the engine room covered in grease and oil. He would emerge with a huge smile on his face, talking about whatever machine he had fixed. He called everyone friend and gave hugs that Kiravel had to be careful about because his strength could hurt her if he squeezed too hard. Kevin Shaw was the youngest human on the crew besides Kiravel herself. He was shy and awkward and obsessed with learning about alien cultures. He asked her hundreds of questions about Valorian society and wrote everything down in a worn notebook. He seemed genuinely fascinated by everything she told him, even the boring details. Dr. Linda Morris became something like a mother figure. Kiravel had never really known her own mother, who had handed her over to the state care facilities when her defective markings became apparent. But Linda checked on her every day. She brought extra blankets when the nights felt cold. She taught her human songs and told her stories about Earth. Nathan Cole was the ship's cook. He was a round, cheerful man with a big belly and an even bigger laugh. When he discovered that Valorians could safely eat most Earth vegetables, he made it his personal mission to introduce Kiravel to real food. Every day, he prepared something new for her to try. Every day he watched her reaction with eager eyes. Grace Miller was the navigator. She was quiet and rarely spoke, but she noticed everything. Nothing escaped her attention. She would catch Kiravel looking lost or confused, and would silently guide her in the right direction without making her feel embarrassed. Amy Chun handled all the communications for the ship. She laughed easily and constantly told terrible jokes that nobody found funny except herself. But her laughter was so genuine that everyone ended up smiling anyway. Ryan Lopez was the pilot. He let Kiravel sit in the cockpit and watch through the big front windows as stars blurred past during faster-than-light travel. He explained how the ship worked in simple terms she could understand. He never made her feel stupid for asking questions. Ben Porter managed all the cargo and supplies. He was gruff on the outside and pretended not to care about anything. But Kiravel noticed that small gifts kept appearing outside her door. A comfortable pillow, a book of human fairy tales translated into the common galactic language, a warm sweater in her size. She never saw who left them, but she suspected she knew. These 9 humans became her family. It was a word she had never truly understood before. Valorians did not have families in the human sense. They had genetic contributors and care facilities and social units. But family meant something different. Family meant people who chose to love you even when they did not have to dot as the weeks turned into months. Kiravel also began to notice something about humans that the galactic records had gotten completely wrong. Yes, humans were capable of violence. She saw Ryan and Ben sparring in the cargo bay sometimes. Their movements were fast and brutal. She heard stories about human wars that had killed millions. She learned about the weapons they had invented to destroy each other. But she also saw Daniel stay awake all night to fix a broken heater because Grace had mentioned she felt cold. She saw Nathan give away his own dessert to Kevin after the young linguist had a difficult day. She saw Amena work herself to exhaustion trying to find fair trade deals that would keep the crew fed. Humans did not lack empathy. If anything, they had too much of it. They felt everything with intense power. Joy and sadness. Love and anger. Hope and fear. Their emotions were like storms that swept through them and left nothing untouched. And they had extended those emotions to her. One evening, the crew gathered in the common room to watch an old human film. It was called The Lord of the Rings, and it told the story of small creatures facing impossible danger. Kiravel found herself squeezed between Kevin and Amy on the old couch. A blanket covered her legs. A bowl of something called popcorn sat in her lap. On the screen, the small heroes were fighting against evil with nothing but friendship and courage to protect them. Kiravel found herself fascinated. Why do humans tell stories like this? She asked during a quiet moment. Stories where the weak defeat the strong. Emma was sitting nearby in her favorite chair. She thought about the question for a moment. Because we believe it can be true, I suppose. Or we want it to be true. Humans have always cheered for the underdog. The underdog? The one nobody expects to win. The one that everyone has given up on. Emma smiled at her with warm eyes. We see ourselves in them. And we see you. Kiravel felt her throat tighten with emotion she could not name. Later that night she could not sleep. She wandered through the quiet ship until she found Emma alone on the observation deck. The captain was staring out at the endless field of stars. Captain, may I ask you something? Of course. You said humans take care of their own. But I am not human. I am not even close to human. Why do you care what happens to me? Emma was quiet for a long time. Then she turned to face Kiravel with a thoughtful expression. You want to know what I think makes humans different from most species we have met out here? It is not our strength or our ability to survive harsh conditions or our adaptability. It is that we can look at something completely different from ourselves and still see a person. A soul. Someone who deserves love and protection. She pointed at the stars outside the window. The galaxy is huge and cold and does not care about any of us. But we care about each other. That is how we survive. That is how we have always survived. By refusing to face the darkness alone. She reached out and gently touched Kiravel's shoulder. You are not human, but you are a person. And you matter. That is enough. That will always be enough. Tears spilled down Kiravel's cheeks. And as they fell, she noticed something strange. Her markings were glowing. Not the steady cold light of a normal Valorian, but a warm, flickering glow powered by emotions she had never known she could feel. Thank you. She whispered. No, Emma said softly. Thank you for giving us a chance to prove we are not monsters. 3 months after Kiravel joined the crew of the Wandering Star, everything changed with a single transmission. Amy was working at her communications station when her equipment lit up with an incoming signal. Her usual cheerful expression disappeared as she read the message. Her face went pale. Without saying a word, she sent the transmission to Captain Emma's personal screen. Within minutes, the entire crew had gathered in the mess hall. The tension in the air was thick enough to touch. Kiravel sat at the center of the table, surrounded by the humans who had become her family. She already knew something terrible was about to happen. Emma stood at the head of the table with her arms crossed. Her face was hard like stone. A Valorian diplomatic vessel has entered our sector, she announced. They are demanding an immediate meeting with me. They have invoked several galactic laws regarding the recovery of abandoned biological property. The room erupted in angry voices. Biological property. Ryan spat, his usually calm face twisted with disgust. They are talking about her like she is cargo. Can they do that? Kevin asked. His voice was higher than normal with anxiety. Legally, I mean. She is a person. She has rights. Emma held up her hand for silence. Under Valorian law, individuals who are declared genetically deficient lose their status as persons. They are classified as medical waste. That is barbaric. Linda breathed. That is their culture, Grace said quietly from her corner. Half the species in the galaxy operate on principles we would find horrifying. Man slammed his fist on the table. So what do we do? Hand her over? Let them dispose of her like trash? No. Emma's voice was steel. We do not. She looked around the table and met the eyes of every crew member one by one. I want everyone to understand what this means. If we refuse to surrender Kiravel, we will be violating the Galactic Non-Interference Accords. The Valorians could demand sanctions against our ship. They could make it impossible for us to trade in half the known systems. They could brand us as criminals. She paused to let the weight of her words settle over the room. So I am not ordering anyone to do anything. This is a vote. All in favor of telling the Valorians exactly where they can put their biological property claim. Every hand at the table went up without a moment of hesitation. Even quiet Grace, even nervous Kevin, every single one of them. Emma smiled with fierce pride. That is my crew. She turned to Kiravel and her expression softened. Go to your quarters and lock the door. Whatever happens next, stay there until one of us comes for you. Do you understand? Kiravel nodded. She was too overwhelmed to speak. Amy took her hand and led her away from the table. 1 hour later, a Valorian shuttle docked with the Wandering Star. Kiravel watched from her small window as the alien vessel connected to the human ship. Her 4 hearts beat wildly in her chest. Her hands trembled at her sides. She had thought she was safe. She had allowed herself to hope. Now her past had found her again. 3 Valorian officials walked into the cargo bay of the Wandering Star, their bioluminescent markings pulsed with patterns of superiority and disgust. They were tall and thin with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed with inner light. The leader was a male whose markings swirled in elaborate designs that indicated very high status. He looked at the assembled humans the same way someone might look at insects crawling across their food. I am high. Arbiter Telos Vex, he announced. His translator rendered his words in cold, precise tones. You are harboring Valorian biological waste, designated Kiravel. You will surrender it to us immediately. Emma stepped forward to face him. Her stance was relaxed, but her eyes were hard as diamonds. She's not biological waste. She's a member of my crew. Telos Vex's markings flickered with what might have been amusement. Ah yes, humans. We have heard much about your species. Deathworlders who claim to value all life while consuming other creatures and waging endless wars against yourselves. Your hypocrisy is noted. At least we do not throw children away because they do not glow. Pretty enough that the Arbiter's markings flare brighter with anger. You do not understand our ways. The defective one carries flawed genetics. Allowing her to continue existing is pollution of our species' purity. It is mercy to end her existence. Daniel made a low growling sound in his throat. Ryan's hand moved toward the weapon at his belt. Even Kevin, who was normally so timid, had his jaw set in defiance. Emma held up her hand to keep her crew in check. Here is what you do not understand, Arbiter. We are not giving her to you. Not now, not ever. She's under our protection. Telos Vex stepped closer until he towered over the human captain. His markings pulsed with barely hidden contempt. He was at least 2 feet taller than her. You would risk your ship and your livelihood and your standing in the galactic community for a creature your own kind would consider worthless? One small defective alien who offers you nothing of value. Emma did not step back. She did not flinch. She looked up at the towering Valorian without any trace of fear in her eyes. Yes, she said simply. That is exactly what we would do. Why? Because that is what humans do. We protect the weak. We stand up for the helpless. We fight for the people everyone else has given up on. Her voice grew harder with each word. And if you have a problem with that, you are welcome to try taking her by force. But I should warn you about something. Humans invented war. We have been practicing for a very, very long time. The cargo bay fell completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The air itself seemed to freeze solid. Then Telos Vex laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound without any warmth. Keep the defective one, he said with contempt dripping from every word. She was worthless to us anyway. But know this, Captain. You have made enemies today. The Valorian Collective does not forget insults. Neither do we, Emma replied evenly. Now get off my ship. The Valorians left without another word. Their shuttle detached and flew back to their diplomatic vessel. Within an hour they had jumped out of the sector entirely. When Kiravel emerged from her quarters, she found the entire crew waiting for her in the hallway. Emma stepped forward and placed both hands on her shoulders. It is done. They are gone, and they are never taking you anywhere. Kiravel could not hold back any more. She broke down in tears and her body shook with sobs she could not control. The emotions were too big to contain. Fear and relief and gratitude and love all mixed together into something overwhelming. One by one, the crew of the Wandering Star wrapped their arms around her. Daniel first with his strong, gentle embrace. Then Linda with her motherly warmth. Then Kevin and Amy and Nathan and Grace and Ryan and Ben. And finally Emma, who held on longest of all. They surrounded her, completely. 9 humans who had risked everything for one abandoned alien girl. 9 people who had chosen her when her own kind had thrown her away. This was family. This was love. This was what she had been searching for her entire life without even knowing it. And she was never letting go. 1 year had passed since the day a dying alien girl was rescued from a failing space station. 1 year since Kiravel had learned that monsters could be saviors and that family did not require shared blood. She stood on the bridge of the Wandering Star, looking out at the vast ocean of stars. Her reflection stared back at her from the window. She looked different now. Taller, stronger, healthier. The human food and medicine had done wonders for her body. But the biggest changes were on the inside, where nobody could see. Her markings glowed softly in the dim light of the bridge. Not the cold, steady light of a pure Valorian, but something warmer and more alive. Dr. Linda had run tests and discovered something interesting. Kiravel's markings were not defective at all. They simply worked differently. Instead of responding to genetics, they responded to emotions. When she felt happy, they glowed bright. When she felt sad, they dimmed. When she felt love, they pulsed with gentle warmth. She was not broken. She had never been broken. She was simply different. And different was not the same as wrong. The past year had taught her many things. Ryan had taught her how to pilot the ship. She could now navigate through asteroid fields and execute emergency maneuvers. Daniel had taught her basic engineering. She understood how the engines worked and could perform simple repairs. Kevin had shared his love of languages, and she had learned to speak basic human English without needing her translator. Linda had given her medical training so she could help treat injuries in emergencies. She had become a real member of the crew. Not a passenger. Not a burden. A contributing part of the family. The news of what the humans had done for her had spread through the galaxy in whispers and rumors. Other species began to see humanity in a new light. Not just as Deathworlders to be feared, but as something else entirely. Protectors, perhaps. Champions of those who had been forgotten. Other refugees had started seeking out human ships. Orphans and outcasts from dozens of different species. Those who had been abandoned or cast out or left behind by their own kind. And more often than not, the humans took them in. It was not always easy. Resources were limited. Cultural differences caused problems. Some alien governments complained that humans were meddling in matters that did not concern them. But humanity kept going forward. They adapted. They made do. They built families out of strangers and created hope where there had been none. The door behind Kiravel slid open and Captain Emma Lawson walked onto the bridge. She carried a cup of the dark, bitter drink humans called coffee. She smiled when she saw Kiravel at the window. Thinking deep thoughts. Emma asked. Thinking about the future. Wondering what comes next. Emma came to stand beside her and gazed out at the endless expanse. That is the thing about the future. Nobody knows what it holds. But that is what makes it exciting. Are you not afraid? Terrified, Emma admitted with a grin. But I have learned something in my years of traveling between the stars. Fear is not a reason to stop moving forward. It is just part of the journey. She put an arm around Kiravel's shoulders. You know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who survived the worst her people could do to her. Someone who found hope when there was none. Someone who was going to do amazing things. Kiravel felt her markings pulse with warmth at the captain's words. She had been thinking about something for a long time now. An idea that had been growing slowly in her mind. Now felt like the right moment to share it. Captain, I have been thinking. There are others like me out there. Other Valorians who were abandoned. Other species that throw away their own people like garbage. Maybe we could help them. Emma's eyes lit up with pride and something that looked like joy. I was wondering when you would bring that up. You knew? I suspected. You have a big heart, Kiravel. It was only a matter of time before you wanted to use it to help others. She turned to face the young alien directly. Her expression became serious but still warm. It will not be easy. We will make more enemies. We will face more danger. Some people will say we are fools for getting involved. Let them say it, Kiravel replied. She was surprised by the strength in her own voice. I was forsaken and you found me. How can I not try to do the same for others? Emma laughed. It was a sound full of joy and affection. That is the most human thing I have ever heard anyone say. She offered her hand and Kiravel took it. Their grips were firm and certain. All right, then, crew member Kiravel. Let us go find some people who need saving. The rest of the crew had gathered behind them without Kiravel noticing. Daniel with his warm smile. Linda with proud tears in her eyes. Kevin practically bouncing with excitement. Nathan already planning meals for new passengers. Grace nodding with quiet approval. Amy grinning ear to ear. Ryan ready at the pilot controls. Ben pretending not to care, while clearly caring very much about her family. All of them. Every single one. Emma addressed the crew. We have a new mission. There are people out there who have been abandoned by their own kind. Outcasts and orphans who have nowhere to go. We are going to find them. We are going to help them. It will be dangerous and it will be hard, and we probably will not get thanked for it. She paused and looked around at each of them. Any objections? Silence. Then Daniel spoke up. Captain, with all due respect, that is the stupidest question you have ever asked. Laughter filled the bridge. Real, genuine laughter from people who loved each other and would follow each other into the darkest corners of the universe. Ryan turned to his controls. Setting course for the outer territories, Captain. That is where most of the abandoned ones end up. The engines hummed to life. The stars outside the window began to shift as the ship turned toward unexplored space. Kiravel watched her reflection in the glass one more time. A year ago, she had been a dying girl with no hope and no future. Now she was part of something bigger than herself. Part of a crew. Part of a family. Part of a mission to help others who were suffering the way she had suffered. Behind her lay the cold calculations of a galaxy that measured worth in genetic purity and economic value. Ahead lay the unknown. Dangerous and unpredictable and full of possibilities. Somewhere in that vast darkness there were others waiting. Forsaken and forgotten and alone. They did not know it yet, but their lives were about to change. They had no hope yet, but the humans were coming. And they were bringing a young alien girl who understood exactly what it felt like to be saved. The wandering star jumped into faster than light travel. The stars blurred into streaks of light. And a new chapter began for a crew that had proven something important to the entire galaxy. Sometimes, the real monsters were the ones who abandoned their own children. And sometimes the ones everyone called monsters turned out to be the only ones brave enough to care.